Thanks. I'm going to give you just the sort of two parts. If anyone gets bored at any moment, stick your hand up. If you're just trying to be disruptive, don't. There we go. There's always one. But here we go. Let's just kick off with a video. So that's sort of the Facebook we know and many of us, most of us use. Just a quick background on me. I've had a pretty interesting journey. I did a bunch of years of consulting, and then I got into this sort of infrastructure game, and I worked at a company called CCOM. And what was funny at CCOM was we were building all these big fiber optic pipes connecting Africa, and we were trying to bring the first uncapped internet into South Africa. We did, but we also went into Kenya and Tanzania and all the way up the east coast of Africa. But I was always sitting there going, well, the telecoms have it easy because the telcos, we build all the fiber, and the telcos just get to distribute the internet and drive up their data revenues. So as irony has it, I sort of moved from CCOM into the telco space. And I got involved in launching a bunch of telcos here and overseas. And then I was in the telco space, and I was like, well, it's so great being in this space, but I really envy the over-the-top players because the Facebooks, Googles, and the e-commerce players get all their margins over using the internet that's been set up by these telcos who built this huge infrastructure, and of course the fiber optic players who provide the sort of the underground pipes that bring it all to fruition. So I've sort of been all the way through the chain, and each step I hated everyone else. And I'm finally at the top and feel very happy with everyone else, and have sort of come to grips with it through the journey. But so I look after the commercial team in Africa for Facebook. I've been there over a couple of years now, almost 2.5 years, which puts me in the oldest 70% of the business, longer than 70% of the business. And people come to me and go, wow, everyone must have resigned after you joined. But the reality is, I think when I joined, we were on about 4,500 people, and we're now sitting at over 10,000 full-time employees. So still a fraction of Google, but really in the last 2 years, it's scaled quickly. So I'm, I've been sort of brought down here into the market to help set up shop and get Africa going for Facebook. So no better first slide to open with the one that blows all our sort of counterparts in Menlo Park, California's minds, and one we've all seen 100 times down here, but just the sheer scale of the continent that we're on. And this is a slide that I used to look at when I was with CCOM, but the Ericsson Mobility Report they do every year looks at data consumption. And Sub-Saharan Africa in 2013-14, they were predicting the highest growth in data consumption on the planet, and at 65% compound annual growth rate. So that's it's a 20x growth in data traffic over the next 4 or 5 years. Now, I like that one because coming back to sort of my roots in the fiber and the core and the cables, it's very much the start of everything else that comes in the ecosystem. But what it really means is that the mobile sort of, I don't even say revolution is a cliche, but the sort of mobile drive that's happening now with smartphones getting down, it was sub $50, sub $40, and now the big talk is sub $30, combined with huge amounts of bandwidth coming in. We've all had our own torn up for the last 4 years in South Africa as they're trenching the fiber in. Some of us are lucky enough to have it in our homes, but this is really exciting, and this is really the space in which this digital world of advertising that Google and Facebook and a bunch of others have really come to the front end. So this is a nice one, which is really saying that in the 50s, everything was hunky-dory. The TV came in the mid-50s and basically disrupted completely this notion of if you wanted to reach a consumer, you needed to use the radio. And TV dominated eyeballs for a really long time until about 2010, where suddenly this access to digital information and then our time spent on digital came out of nowhere and then suddenly trumped TV. And what we're seeing there is that mobile is actually driving most of those eyeballs are coming through mobile. No place more so than here in Africa. And I'm going to share some stats with you guys about Facebook in South Africa specifically, and I'll ask you guys a couple of questions and see who gets it right. But really what we're seeing here is that the point of inflection, and excuse the sort of varying x-axis there, but what we're seeing is literally in the next couple of years, if not today in South Africa, more time, an easier way and a better way to reach people through the eyeballs is on mobile devices than through TV. So it brings up an interesting discussion, one I have a lot with media planners about the role of TV and the role of digital, and that's something we can chat about at the end in Q&A. I don't want to disrupt this too much. So I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I was really looking at it. The question was, how has mobile really changed the market? And it made me think tonight, I was trying to think, well, how's mobile not changed everything? Right? And starting at the top there, if you looked at Facebook's financial reports, and the PR agency goes crazy when I use the word financial reports in a presentation, but if you looked at our financial reports 4 years ago, you looked at our income statement, and I would ask you guys what percentage of Facebook's success or revenues were coming from mobile. Is anyone going to guess? 10%? Oh, Fred, you're so smart. 0%. Okay? Mobile was not part of our business 4 years ago. We were a desktop company, we were doing desktop advertising, and mobile was something that was there in the background, but we hadn't really worked out a way that this was going to be a big deal, was becoming a big deal for Facebook. If you look at it today, I think our last financial report that's publicly available to the PR company, and you're looking at me, is more than 70% of our revenues are coming from the mobile side. And it's not to be a revenue discussion. What we're really saying is that mobile has been instrumental in changing our business. And a big part of the excitement that I have working there is that rate of change is exceptional in something that size. So really exciting, but that's what mobile's done for us. If you asked me a year ago who was bigger in terms of our user base in South Africa in the way they access Facebook, BlackBerry or Android, it would have been BlackBerry. And if I ask you today, everyone says, okay, cool, it's Android. How much bigger do you think Android is than BlackBerry? 5 times today. We have 5 times the number of access points through Android than we do through BlackBerry in 1 year. So massive, exciting shift happening in the space. I speak to a lot of retailers and e-commerce players who talk to me about developing apps. Do we use a web? Do we do an app? Do we do Apple? Android's just really been an unbelievable success story here for all of us in Africa. Feature phones. A year ago, if I was telling you, I would have said feature phones are the thing. If you can provide advertising with feature phones, you're accessing the vast majority of Africa. That's still true. But my philosophical hypothesis back then was that people would move from basic phones to feature phones as people move from feature phones to smartphones. So you'd have this natural trend which would keep on filling up the feature phone bucket. What we're seeing is, surprise, surprise, the leapfrog word again, but people are moving from basic phones to smartphones. And just anecdotally, I was chatting to my gardener 2 weeks ago, and I said, how are you doing this morning? And he said, I'm fine, but your Wi-Fi's down. So, true story, you can't make it up. So, it just gives you some perspective on how fast this is happening. So feature phones are a big deal for us, but what's happening in the smartphone space is really spectacular. Quick question: what percentage of what percentage of people in South Africa use Facebook through mobile as their primary interface to Facebook? So, e.g., of all the connections that happen to us every day, what percentage are through mobile and what percentage are not through mobile? 94%.
Wow.
So 94%,
You were very classy.
94% of South Africans accessing Facebook are doing primarily through their mobile phone. Really, really interesting. Again, really clear discussion if anyone's thinking about a mobile strategy. But we all know this is here of mobile, so I'm not going to harp on. But really just something there that's really interesting. And we're seeing it from a Facebook side of all our products. You know, it's changing the way we see banking, talking, educating, shopping. Quoting Arthur, I think he was saying in our last Heavy Chef event here, and I was lucky enough to come through, that the retail sector is growing in sort of single-digit numbers every year, but that the e-commerce sector, so that's the online retail, is growing upwards of 25% year on year. So when you look at that difference, that's very much driven through what's happening with mobile, what's happening through digital, what's happening with us being online. Talking, educating, banking, mobile payments, and peer-to-peer mobile payments are coming into the fold with Facebook. We've seen it with them opening up Messenger for third-party apps, so that sort of stuff's being developed. Talking, we've seen what's happened with WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp's had a really amazing impact in the market through offering voice calling from WhatsApp to WhatsApp. I don't know how many of you guys in the room have used WhatsApp to make a phone call to someone else. Yeah, so really I'm enjoying it as well. And on the education side, that's very much the core to a lot of what's happening in Africa is using mobile to educate. So really exciting for us and our platforms is Facebook. But I'm going to go back in time. I don't know how many people have met my grandfather Jim, but I'm just going to give you a bit of a story here. And one or two of you might have seen it before. But this is my grandpa Jim. It's not really. It's a black and white picture of someone who looked like he could have been my grandpa Jim in his 20s. But Grandpa Jim had it really easy, right? Because in his era, he would go to his local store and he would speak to Bradley, and we knew his name was Bradley, who owns the store, because the store was called Bradley's, because that's what you did back then. And he'd chat to Bradley and say, you know, I need to buy some goodies, I need to get some fruit, can you load it in Dad's car, which I snuck out for the day and took it for a ride. And that was the experience, right? And Grandpa Jim didn't really need to know their brands or what specific products were better than others, because Bradley was there, and Bradley would provide this personalized, wonderful marketing experience. You walk in, and literally you've got someone to walk you through the store and say, this is what you want, this is what you need, this is the right stuff. If you want a bread slicer, or a medieval something. But, you know, these were the sort of things, and this was Bradley. The problem that happened with this beautiful, personalized sort of nirvana of marketing, where everything is really, it's this ultimate word of mouth, is that Bradley still got really successful and turned into what looks like a butchery there, but I couldn't find a lot of photos of old stores. But Bradley still grew. And what happened is, as Bradley still grew, Bradley was nowhere to be found. And if Jim went to a store, and this could be Bradley's, a picture of Stutterford's in the old days down here, but if Jim went into the store, you'd suddenly be sitting with this plethora of choice, this overwhelming number of options, without someone to hold your hand and take you through that journey. And that, for me, sort of sums up very much this era of branding that's come to the forefront in the last sort of call it 20 years, right? Where brands suddenly have to shout and speak for themselves, because there's no one there to help you on the journey. Now, digital's pretty cool, because I think what we're seeing with the Googles and the Facebooks and Twitters and all the other sort of this digital era of shopping is it's bringing back, for me, some of the beauty of the old days. It's allowing you once again to personalize your communication with people. And I'm going to give you a classic example for me, which is the ultimate impersonal marketing event of the year, which is the Super Bowl. And then I'm going to tell you how they're...
A controversial spot airs during the Super Bowl. The noise begins. But then, a positive conversation begins. We crafted individual, relevant messages to specifically targeted custom audiences on Facebook. We even took unused behind-the-scenes footage and shared it with key audience segments, giving the opportunity for the real America to speak on Facebook. Coca-Cola has spoken, and they've said, America is beautiful.
So what happened here, which was interesting, is they had their standard Super Bowl ad, right, which ran for the 30-second slot, which we know is X $1,000 per second. And they ran the slot and targeted the mass broad audience, which is the Super Bowl audience, And then they came to us afterwards, they said, look, we've got this huge amount of work we've done, this great creative, we've done this video that, because it's the Super Bowl, it's now tackled every single segment of the US, and they've sort of bundled each one into 2-second sort of slots inside this 30-second slot, and said, well, what can we do with this to make it more relevant and to give it more legs? And what happened was effectively this, where we split the movie